You know Rome. You know the Crusades. You have seen 100 documentaries about medieval Europe. But there is another half of human civilization. Empires that rivaled Rome. Battles that dwarfed the Crusades. Cities that made Paris look like a village. That most of the world has never been told properly. You have heard the names. The Great Wall. The Forbidden City. The Samurai. But no one has ever brought them to life with AI for you, or shown you how they all connect. Until now. Let's start with what you think you know. The Great Wall of China is a wall. One long wall, built across the top of China, to keep the barbarians out. Almost none of that is true. And while we are here, no. You cannot see it from space. China's first astronaut tried. He couldn't find it. The wall is long, but it is only 10 meters wide. From orbit, that is like trying to spot a piece of string on a football pitch. That myth was first printed in 1754, 2 centuries before anyone went to space to check. It was not one wall. It was dozens of walls, built by different kingdoms, in different centuries, for different reasons. Some were built to stop invaders. Some were built to stop each other. And the wall you see in every photograph? That is the youngest version, built less than 600 years ago. The real story starts 2,000 years before that. 400 years before Christ, China was not one country. It was 7 kingdoms, locked in a war that had lasted generations. And one by one, each kingdom began to build. Not one wall. Their own walls. Against each other. The state of Qi built a wall across the mountains of Shandong, as early as the 5th century BC. The state of Zhao built a wall across its northern frontier, to hold back the mounted nomads of the steppe. And the state of Yang pushed a wall all the way to the Liaodong Peninsula, the edge of the known world. These were not one project. They were not even pointing in the same direction. It would take one man to force them into a single line. In 221 BC, the state of Qin conquered all 6 rivals. And its king declared himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. He standardized the writing, the currency, the weights and measures, the width of cart axles. But one problem remained. The northern frontier, and the Hunnic horsemen who raided it at will. He sent his most trusted general, Meng north with 300,000 soldiers. Meng Tian's orders: take the old walls of Zhao, Yang, and Qin, and connect them into one. 300,000 soldiers. And hundreds of thousands of conscripted laborers. The technique was rammed earth. Soil packed between wooden frames, pounded layer by layer until it was as hard as stone. When Meng Tian finished, the wall stretched from Lindao in Gansu to the Liaodong Peninsula. Over 5,000 kilometers of continuous frontier defense, for the first time in history. But numbers tell you the scale. They do not tell you the cost. The laborers were peasants, pulled from their farms by imperial decree. Convicts. Prisoners of war. Men who had no choice. They worked through summer heat and winter storms. With no shelter, no medicine, and barely enough food to survive. Modern estimates suggest that hundreds of thousands of workers died during the Qin Wall's construction alone. In China, there is a legend. A woman named Meng Jiangnu traveled 1,000 miles to bring her husband winter clothes. When she arrived, she learned he was already dead. Buried beneath the wall he had built. The legend says she wept so bitterly that a section of the wall collapsed, revealing his bones. Meng Jiangnu is a legend, but the grief she represents was real. The Chinese have a saying: the Great Wall was built with bones, not bricks. The Qin dynasty collapsed just 15 years after it began, but the wall survived. Under the Han dynasty, Emperor Wu turned his attention west. His armies pushed through the Hushi Corridor, a narrow passage between the Tibetan Plateau and the Gobi Desert. And the wall followed them, westward, section by section. By 101 BC the wall reached Dunhuang, the edge of the Taklamakan Desert. The Han Wall eventually stretched over 10,000 kilometers, the longest version ever built. And its purpose had changed. This was no longer just a barrier against raiders. It was the backbone of the Silk Road, protecting the trade routes that connected China to Rome. Yemen Pass, the Jade Gate. Chinese silk traveled west through it. Roman glass traveled east. And standing guard over all of it, a wall of packed earth in the desert that is still visible 2,000 years later. Now, the version you know. In 1368, the Ming dynasty drove out the Mongol Yuan rulers and restored Chinese control. And they inherited a problem that was 1,500 years old. The northern frontier. The nomads. The raids that never stopped. The Ming did what no dynasty before them had done. They rebuilt the entire northern wall in brick and stone. Not rammed earth. Not packed mud. Fired brick. Cut stone. And a mortar recipe that scientists are still trying to explain. The Ming builders mixed lime with sticky rice, cooked into a porridge and blended into the mortar. In 2010, a team at Zhejiang University discovered why it works. The starch forms a dense network of nanocrystals that bond to the brick at the molecular level. It is stronger than modern cement. And it is still holding 600 years later. The Ming Great Wall stretched over 8,800 kilometers. If the Qin Wall was a line drawn in dirt, the Ming Wall was a fortress carved in stone. In 1567, the general Qi Jiguang was assigned to defend the wall near Beijing. He designed a new kind of watchtower, hollow, with rooms inside where soldiers could sleep, store weapons, and shelter from arrows. Over 1,000 of these towers were built along his section alone. Each one garrisoned by 30 to 50 soldiers. From any tower, you could see the next. And the next. And the next. But the wall's most remarkable feature was not the stone. It was the fire. Every 2.5 to 5 kilometers, there was a beacon tower. When a soldier spotted an enemy force, he lit a fire. The next tower saw it and lit theirs. And the next. And the next. A message that would take a rider days on horseback could cross hundreds of kilometers in hours. During the day, they burned wolf dung and straw for thick black smoke. At night, they used open flame. And there was a code. 1 fire, fewer than 100 enemies. 2 fires, 500. The number of fires told the garrison exactly what was coming. This was not just a wall. It was a communications network, an ancient telegraph running across 6,000 kilometers of mountain and desert. At the same time that the Han dynasty was pushing its wall across the Gobi Desert, Rome was building a wall of its own. Hadrian's Wall, the most famous frontier in European history. It was a serious military fortification. Well built. Well garrisoned. It stretched 117 kilometers. The Great Wall, all versions combined, stretched over 21,000 kilometers. 117 kilometers versus 21,000. Hadrian's Wall was roughly 3 meters tall. The Ming Wall rose nearly 8 meters, with a top wide enough for 5 horses to ride abreast. This is not a comparison of civilizations. Both empires were extraordinary. But in scale, nothing in the ancient world came close. And here is the part that no one tells you. The wall was not an exception. It was a pattern. The Sui dynasty dug a canal from north to south, 1,700 kilometers, and it killed the emperor who ordered it. The next dynasty used it for 1,000 years. The state of Qin built an irrigation system in Sichuan in 256 BC. It is still running. Today, every dynasty, the same instinct. Solve the problem. Mobilize the population. Build at a scale that no one else would even attempt. And if you have ever wondered why modern China builds high-speed rail networks across mountains, why it dams the Yangtze, why it treats infrastructure the way other countries treat ideology, now you know where that instinct comes from. It has been there for 2,300 years. And it has not stopped. But back at the wall, the story was about to turn. And not because of what was outside it. For a century, a new enemy had been gathering beyond the wall's northeastern edge. The Jurchen tribes, later known as the Manchus, united under a single leader. And they wanted in. Between them and China stood one gate. Shanhai Pass, where the Great Wall meets the sea. The most heavily fortified point on the entire frontier. For decades, the Manchus threw themselves against it. Siege after siege. And the wall held. Every single time. But while China stared north, it was rotting from within. Famine. Corruption. A government that had forgotten how to govern. In 1644, a rebel army led by a former postal worker named Li Zicheng swept across northern China. And they did what the Manchus never could. Beijing fell from the inside. The last Ming emperor walked to a hill behind the Forbidden City and hanged himself from a crooked tree. Now, one man held the fate of China in his hands. General Wu Sangui, the commander of Shanhai Pass. Behind him, rebels who had taken his capital. Before him, the Manchu army that had waited a generation for this moment. He made his choice. He opened the gate. Together, Wu Sangui and the Manchus crushed the rebel army at the Battle of Shanhai Pass. It was over in a day. But the Manchus did not go home. They marched south. They took Beijing. They took the throne. Wu Sangui had not invited an ally, he had invited a conqueror. The wall that held for 2,000 years was not broken. It was not climbed. It was opened from the inside by the man sworn to defend it. By the Qing dynasty, the wall was abandoned. The Manchu rulers came from beyond it. They had no need for a barrier against themselves. For centuries, it was a quarry. Local villagers pulled bricks from it to build their homes. As recently as the 2010s, bricks with original Ming engravings were being sold to tourists. 30 yuan each. About $4.50 for a piece of a wonder of the world. Today, 30% of the Ming Wall has disappeared entirely. Of what remains, only 8% is in good condition. Then the modern world found it again. And turned it into something it never was, a tourist attraction. A postcard. But stand on the parts they haven't restored. Stand where the rammed earth is still visible, packed by hands that have been dust for 2,000 years. And you will understand something that no photograph can show you. This was not built to be beautiful. It was built by empires terrified of what lay beyond their borders. Built by the hands of millions of people who had no choice in the matter. And it is still standing. Meanwhile, in the East covers the history that never made it into your textbooks. Not because it was less important, but because the people who wrote your textbooks were on the other side of the world. Next time, an army of 8,000 soldiers. Every single face, different. Every single one, made by hand. Guarding a tomb that no one has opened in 2,200 years. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Tell me in the comments, what surprised you most?